took the first round of this training last year, so it's been completely updated. So I'm really happy you're joining us today because you'll get new skills. So welcome to the Misinformation Project, how to counter online misinformation narratives. So it's a 90-minute interactive training session. It was developed by Journalists for Human Rights and First Draft News, and it's being rolled out across the country by national trainers starting this week. So I think you guys you might be the very first session as part of this project. So so very exciting. It's gonna, the whole project is the next 2 to 3 months. So I think you guys are the first. In this particular session, we'll be going over new digital and news literacy skills with a special focus on finding and reporting online misinformation. So real quick, in the chat, I've put a pre-training survey. It'll take 30 seconds. If you can just, if you can take literally 30 seconds just to click on that pre-training survey. There will also be a survey at the end of the 90 minutes. So this is just going to help us kind of assess who we're training, where we're training people, and how the whole project is working out. So I'll give you a minute and then we will get right in to things. So again, great to see everybody. Okay, so I'll just, nothing happens when you click on it. Let me try, I have another link. Is anybody else having the problem, that same problem?
Yes.
Yeah, the link is there. Try this one.
That's better.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, great. So people are just doing a pre-training survey. It's like a 30-second thing. Okay, so there's a lot of information. So I'm going, and you'll see that it's divided in sections and we have activities throughout. So we'll get right to it, unless anybody has any questions before we start. No? Okay, great. So who created this training module? First Draft News. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the organization. It's a global nonprofit based in the UK, also has bureaus in New York City and Sydney, Australia. They provide tools, research, and guidance for people to be more resilient to harmful and misleading information online. So one of the things that First Draft is known for is their election collaboration series. In the past, they've organized groups of journalists in locations that have upcoming elections, and they just basically help them work together to monitor misinformation related to the election and verify and report on it together. So they also have a lot of other resources and information on their website, firstdraftnews.org, but at the end, I will be sending you all a list of links and extra resources, so don't feel that you have to write that down now. So there are 6 sections in this workshop. First, we'll talk a bit about the landscape of information disorder that has been changing so rapidly as well, particularly over the past year. We'll examine tactics and techniques for spreading misinformation. We will talk about specific search skills, verification techniques, effective reporting, and again, at the very end, there's the post-training survey and a number of tools and resources that will be sharing with you. So what are you going to learn? Exactly what I mentioned, the current composition of our information landscape, some practical tips and tools, and we'll also look into effective techniques to even slowing down disinformation. So we'll start off just a few slides on understanding what's going on right now. So maybe you could think of this part as number 1, an opportunity to understand how social and political discourse is functioning right now and how information is mediated currently. And number 2, just to say to yourself, okay, as a journalist, how do these concepts help me put out better information and really connect with my audience? So it all starts with the idea and to understand that our relationship to information is really emotional. So sometimes as journalists, we might think, oh, if people only knew, or if they had the right facts and information, they would change their minds about something. But the reality is, all the information that we share with each other is really at the very base of it an expression of our identity and the communities that we belong to and the things we believe in. We, in a sense, you know, before COVID, when you would be at a dinner party and you wanted to start a conversation, you would actually think about what you're saying and how that kind of, or the people around the table who you were saying it to. When you're at work, your work conversation, is likely very different than with your conversation when you're at home with friends. So this idea is that we in a sense perform for other people, and it's not new. It's just that these conversations have moved from in-person spaces to online spaces, and it means that people aren't necessarily deciding what to believe based on the information, but rather based on the ties that we have to our identities, the things we believe in, we belong to in our communities. So what does that mean? It means that obviously the information landscape is very different than it used to be. People now getting their information less from newsstands or mainstream media, a lot through social media. You've got your uncle's memes on Facebook. You've got some guy on Twitter. You've got, you're being bombarded with discourse on all kinds of things. And just a note on memes, First Draft actually takes them very seriously because they're so compelling often, and that they can really consume the discourse on something, feed off of inside jokes. So we do have to think about all of these things as journalists. COVID is the perfect storm of everything over the past year. We've seen with the pandemic, we had a virus that was new, novel. We didn't know a lot about it when it started. It was scary. There was fear. Our lives were at stake. Our families' lives are at stake. A whole political dimension. People care about politics. It's complex, very difficult to report on, lots of scientific studies and room for error and misinterpretation. So there's a combination of all these things that leave a lot of room and space for uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, there's a lot of room for people to spread misinformation. So what can we do about this? Well, hopefully the first thing we do is stop using the term fake news for three reasons. First of all, it's restrictive. Because it has the word news in it, it makes it seem that the problem is specifically with the media, when in reality, disinformation travels across so many different kinds of formats: memes, videos, podcasts, blogs, screenshots. The second note here is that it's just too binary. It suggests that either something is real or it's fake. But in reality, a lot of the content, most of the content we see exists in those shades of grays, and lies or disinformation that's anchored in a grain of truth are way easier to believe and therefore spread more widely. And the third reason to retire this term fake news is because, again, the news, the term news in it, it's incredibly easy to weaponize. And we've seen this, with the example of Donald Trump is the most obvious example over the past several years. Governments, institutions, celebrities, influencers can use the term to discredit journalists and the media when they don't like what we're writing about. And it ingrains distrust that the public might have in us. So let's stop using the term and start using some more specific definitions, like misinformation, which is, the definition is when people share misleading information but don't necessarily realize it's misleading. And it's often because they're trying to help. So it could be your friend trying to share tips on how to avoid COVID, no intent to harm, or your aunt saw an article that looked interesting and entertaining and wanted to share it. So the intent is the distinction here. And in misinformation, the intent is not to harm. Disinformation is when people intentionally share misleading information with an agenda. And the agenda can vary. So it could be a political agenda because someone wants to achieve a political goal. So, they start spreading disinformation about an opponent. It could be monetary, financial. Somebody scraped Facebook for content, that was compelling, reshared it, hooked it to a website with ads, and all of a sudden they're making a ton of money because of people's clicks. Or it could be an agenda simply to cause harm or confusion. So scholars in this area, I'd like to note, have recently stated for research purposes, it's all misinformation until they can investigate and show what the motive actually was. So only then do researchers refer to it as disinformation. And that's from Joan Donovan, who is at the Shorenstein Center at Harvard. And she's incidentally a Concordia graduate and a world leader in this field. So let's play a game. I'd like everybody to take out their phones and scan on the right. You see the Go Viral game. This is a 5-minute game developed by University of Cambridge psychologists. Okay, the idea is it will walk you through some basics of online manipulation in the era of coronavirus. I don't know if you guys remember the whole cleaning products as potential COVID remedy from earlier in the pandemic, but you might be surprised to learn that close to 6,000 people around the world were hospitalized as a direct result of that misinformation. So in this game, you'll see examples of how real news gets discredited by exploiting fake doctors and remedies, and how lies and rumors get amplified. So take a few minutes to play the game, and then I'll come back to you. I see some of you laughing. It's not without humor, that's for sure. I'll give you another minute. It's cute, eh? I know. Okay. So I'll try and rip you away from playing the game now, but that must have been enough time for you to really recognize some of the basics that the researchers wanted to highlight. I've included the link in the chat if you'd like to continue the game later. But just so you know, the latest findings by those Cambridge researchers suggests that a single play of that game, so one play of the game, can reduce susceptibility to false information for at least 3 months. So there you go. You've just had a mini vaccine against misinformation for 3 months. So let's move on to the second part of this workshop with a look at a few tactics and techniques that people are using right now to share misinformation. And then we'll have a short activity at the end of this section. So visuals, okay, are one of the main form misinformation takes. You know this instinctively, largely because visuals can be super compelling. So they play into people's emotions very quickly, very easily. We see these examples: Trudeau with the mask, the fire, the storm. These images are from TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook just in the last couple of months. So simple visual messages like these ones can be extremely difficult to counter. And often that requires a longer piece of written journalism that you can't bank on people reading after they've already bought into the misinformation that they've been peddled. Visuals, though, can also be screenshots. So, the one we just saw was a manipulated photo. These ones are screenshots. The tricky thing about screenshots is that they obscure the source. So, for example, on Twitter, instead of linking to a tweet, if you only have a screenshot to a tweet, the person reading it can't easily click on it and investigate it. So one example that First Draft debunked in the lead up to the US election is this one here. So who's George Buck? He was running for Congress in Florida, and he posted this screenshot of what looks like a tweet by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with one of the most popular narratives of last year, that coronavirus policies are liberal engineering to keep Trump out of office. So basically, this was circulating saying that Americans should purposely damage their own economy under Trump to help Biden win. So this tweet turned out to be completely fabricated. George Buck later said he only shared it because he thought it looked real, when in reality, it was not. Apart from screenshots, this next example is actually the main visual misinformation technique that is used online. It is genuine information being shared out of context. So on the right, you see a tweet from a person named Thomas Kennedy. Okay, he's got a large following on Twitter, very high engagement, and he's claiming that this photo showed post office boxes being sabotaged as part of a voter suppression effort. So the image is real. Those are United States postal boxes stacked at a warehouse. But a Reddit user claimed the photo was taken at a metal refurbishing company that works with a local United States post office to restore mailboxes. First Draft saw that on Reddit. Through Google Maps, First Draft retrieved an image that was taken in August 2019 that shows the same photo. Then it was just a matter of a phone call to the company to ask an executive if they do restore post boxes for the US Postal Service. It was confirmed. And then obviously this photo had nothing to do with sabotaging the elections. But if you didn't know that, you'd think that this was happening. Another concept that's important to get your mind around is keyword squatting. So according to MediaManipulation.org, the handbook, keyword squatting is this tactic of creating online content around a keyword or around a hashtag in order to control future search traffic. So manipulators make it so that anytime somebody types in their hashtags or keywords, their misinformation will appear before real authentic accounts in search result lists. And they do it with search engine optimization. And it allows manipulators to really flood the online conversation with fake posts and malicious commentary. So this often happens in breaking news situations, social movements, and very polarized issues. So this particular example is one that you might recognize. I don't know if you guys remember the Save the Children conspiracy theory that has been going on for a few years. QAnon, it's a theory that claimed Donald Trump was secretly fighting a network of government officials and celebrities that were running a child trafficking ring. That was their conspiracy theory. And so they started using this hashtag, Save the Children, which sounds like something you'd want to support. Like, who doesn't want to save the children? What's wrong with you if you don't want to save the children? And if you didn't know the context of it, what would start popping up in your feed are messages like the one you see by Anna Kate. The sex-driven agenda of the left has led to the mistreatment of children on many levels: abortion, pedophilia, and early sexualization. So this shows how trends, in many cases, can not be organic and be totally fabricated. And it also underscores the importance of investigating the sources and the origins of a trend you might see online. At this point, are there any questions? Okay. Now we're going to talk about, this is part 3, advanced search and Booleans. So your search is only going to be as good as your keywords. So learning how to think about words we're going to use to research or investigate or monitor disinformation online is really key. So there's 2 basic approaches to how to monitor online content. The first one is monitoring sources. So where is the information coming from? So just knowing the important accounts that you want to follow or problematic accounts that you know or that you have noticed consistently posting misinformation or misleading information. So you might identify a certain board or Twitter user who consistently kind of posts questionable lies or misinformation. And if you see it first on a Reddit board, for example, if you keep an eye on it, you might get ahead of the narratives before they build into the mainstream. So the first approach is looking at the sources. Where are things coming from? The second approach is by looking at the keywords. So words, hashtags, or phrases that people use to talk about whatever issue it is that you're covering. And the reason that there are arrows on this slide is to show that it's a feedback loop. And I'm sure that you have all experienced this when you're looking things up online and trying to research things. Through your keywords, you find new sources to watch. Through your sources, you see what words people are using to talk about something. In paying attention to these feedback loops, you'll really build up your monitoring and social listening capacity. Just using the example of Twitter, I'm sure you've all typed in a keyword to search for an issue that you might be researching or covering, and then a whole bunch of sources pop up. You come through the sources, get a better sense of how the conversation is developing, and it keeps going in this feedback loop. Just because somebody is saying something, obviously, I know I don't even have to say this, but I'll just say it anyway. You can't just see something that somebody says and quote it. You need to verify it, investigate the source, and treat it just as rigorously as normal reporting before reporting on it. So when I'm talking about sources, there are so many different places to look online. So this slide is really just to help open your mind to all the different places that you can potentially monitor for strange narratives, lies, misinformation. You could just to open your mind. So all the obvious ones, right? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and some more anonymous ones, including Discord and 4chan. There are also always new platforms popping up. So it's really up to you just to think about which is more relevant in whatever it is that you're researching. This slide illustrates the power of keywords, particularly when searching on social media. It's a different way to research when you're looking for misinformation. Let's say you wanted to monitor misinformation around immigration. So on the left, there are a lot of obvious words you might choose: refugee, migrant, asylum seeker. But there are also words from various ideological positions, unsavory words like, or phrases like boat people, free riders, drug dealers, etc. So it depends on the kind of information that you're looking for. But often we know that misinformation is very inflammatory. So keep that in mind when deciding on what keywords to investigate. Let's say you also wanted to consider keywords for media bias, or if you were looking for posts about mainstream media ignoring a particular issue, you might use keywords like mainstream media or MSM, which is an abbreviation for mainstream media used widely on Twitter, for example. Fake news, won't cover this, PC Brigade. So you need to look closely at how language is playing across different ideologies to decide on the keywords that you want to use. When starting a research project, or when just when trying to monitor a new topic, it's really helpful to keep a running list or a spreadsheet. You can do this on a Word document or on an Excel sheet, whatever you want. But the idea is to keep track or even brainstorm all the words you might think could be useful to you before you begin. So with Boolean queries, which is something we're going to get into in a few minutes, it can help to list by topic and by words you want to include in your results. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But here, this is just an example of a spreadsheet for voter fraud issues and a bunch of different keywords, climate change and a number of different keywords, impeachment and a number of different, and you see the keywords are new. Obviously, a lot of them are, news related, like voting, election day, etc. But then there's also phrases that people use on social media. The future is female, Team Warren, CNN is trash, voting, 2020 election. So by brainstorming and paying attention to the different kinds of words being used on social media, you can track all kinds of conversations. This is an example of a search string that was used at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic in the early days. So you can see they thought of all the different kinds of ways at that point in time that people could be talking about COVID. So you see the example of all the different kinds of words: coronavirus, COVID-19, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, China flu, Wuhan flu, China virus, coronavirus misspelt. So when you're searching, you have to remember that you're really trying to think of the words people use in conversation on social media when you're trying to research sources of misinformation and disinformation. And remember, like, sometimes the more inflammatory the word, the better when you're looking for these things. So I'd like to try this out with you just to think about keywords, okay? So it says here to think of a divisive social topic, but I'll give you one: the coronavirus vaccine, okay? So take a minute, and I'd like for you guys to drop in the chat any potential keywords you think we could use if we're trying to look up misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine. So remember, a hint is that you might want to think of keywords that you would see on social media, but not necessarily in a main news headline. So I'll think of one. Scamdemic. AstraZeneca, great. Yes. Vax denier, perfect. That's a good one, Barry. Vax denier. Nanotech. Great, Grayson. You guys have got it. You've totally got it. But you're also going to want to use Corona, right? You're thinking about these keywords. Okay, so this is a really good start. All right. A recap on keyword identification. When you're trying to think of what to search, use keywords that people are using on social media, exactly like you guys just came up with, okay? Vax denier, great. AstraZeneca, Lori with the O, misspelled, great. Like that's totally what we're going for. And remember, also think about keywords on both sides of controversial arguments and ideologies. So remember when Hillary ran in the 2016 election? The people that were for Hillary, one thing I might look up was the I'm with her hashtag. But those who didn't support Hillary used what? Like, what would I search for if I was looking for non-Hillary supporters? Crooked Hillary? Put her in jail? Lock her up? Exactly, that's the one, lock her up. Yeah, Alexandre, yes, exactly. Right, so you got to think of opening your mind to the keywords that you're using and recognize that two very different set of keywords will likely lead you to two very different groups of people. So again, think about both sides. Think about places people are currently talking online. And also remember that keywords evolve with time and across languages. So remember here in this slide, nobody's really using SARS-CoV-2 anymore. That was at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's just an example of how in the last 8 or 10 months, a keyword has very clearly evolved with time. So now that we've expanded our minds about keywords, it's time to talk about Boolean search queries. So now, first of all, you might already know about this. Second of all, if you don't, you might think it sounds complicated or unpleasant, like a virus, but it's actually a really easy search technique that you may already be using without knowing it has a name. So Boolean queries are a kind of search string. So they're a specific way of writing search queries so that we can find specific kinds of information. So the way they work is by connecting search words together to either narrow or broaden your results, okay? So within a Boolean query, you'll have operators. The operators are connecting words. So the most common, or, and not. And you'll notice that they're all in caps, and you should always put the operators in caps in your queries, not only for platform searches, but also just for you, for easier reading of your own search queries. So we use these a lot on Google and on Twitter. They work on many platforms, not Facebook, but I have a way to work around that, which we'll talk about later. So back to the operators. So first, let's talk about or. So using or in a search will obviously connect two or more concepts. For example, on the screen, if I were to type protest or riot or violence into Twitter, I'd find every post on the platform that includes all three of those words, not even all three, the protest or riot or violence. So you're going to get a huge set of results because you're telling the platform that any of the words is okay. And is different. When we write and in a search query, it will limit your results and you'll get a smaller number of results. So if you type in protest and BLM and Canada, you'll only get posts that have all three of those words. So just remember that if you use and, you'll get a smaller set of results or you'll get a larger set of results. Less important is the minus operator or the not, which totally excludes certain words from your results. Now, why is this important? Okay, let's say you're trying to find something related to the Notre Dame football team around the time of that huge fire a few years ago. You're going to have a hard time sifting through all the results because most of them will likely be on the actual fire. So what you would do is you would type, let's say you just wanted to look into Twitter, Notre Dame minus fire, or Notre Dame not fire. exactly as I have on this slide. And that would give you all the results with Notre Dame in it without the word fire. Parentheses are another part of Boolean queries. So they help combine the and the or searches. So this is really the key, okay? If we were to put, let's say we wanted to find something specific about coronavirus in any one of these cities, right? In my first, I would put all the corona kind of related words that I might see in parentheses with or. So that would kind of cover off that whole topic. And then I would put and I would put whatever else I'm interested in with the ors in between each one. So by telling Twitter or Google or whatever that I have two groups of words and I want to see at least one of the words from this first group and one of the words from the second group, I'll be able to narrow my search quite effectively. So we're going to practice in just a second, but I'm going to give you one more example. Okay. Here we have two groups of words. This is another Boolean query that was used when First Draft was monitoring claims about election fraud in Pennsylvania. So that's all they were doing, monitoring claims. In the first group, they listed all kinds of words about voting, right? Like just random ballot vote, absentee, whatever. And you'll notice for any phrase, they'll put quotation marks around. So you don't need quotation marks if the word is just a single word, but if it's more than one word, you need to put it in quotations. And in the second group, they listed all words related to Pennsylvania, the location. So examples of the things that came up, the first one that they found was a video that popped up showing what appeared to be ballot requests in Pennsylvania being shredded up and thrown around a trailer. So it turned out to be a video from a paper shredding company that had nothing to do with election ballots, but it was isolated and found, and then First Draft worked to debunk it immediately. So this is just an example, but you see the structure of the actual query. So when you're thinking of Boolean queries, rules to remember: or statements expand your results and statements limit them. Group similar words in parentheses. Phrases need quotations. Capitals don't matter. It's just an aside. And think about language that people actually use. So include misspellings or slang or swear words. So let's try this out. In the chat, your mission is to write a query to help find posts from Canadian nurses talking about the COVID-19 vaccine. So you have two things you're looking for, two potential groups of words: Canadian nurses, COVID-19 vaccine. So think of a query and drop it in the chat and we can workshop them. And this is in Canada, right? I'll just put this. Maybe that could be, oh, okay, let's see, Lori. Canada and nurse and COVID or vaccine. That's great. That's great. COVID-19 or vaccine, and also how about this? So Canada and nurses. So maybe Canada and nurses and COVID-19. Yes. Okay. So both Lori and Barry have produced really great Boolean queries. We can get them to be even more detailed though, because think about it. In terms of Canadian nurses, right? Like, so what's one way, because we often want to find somebody to talk about their own experience, right? So, okay, Canada or Canadian, Nurse or nurses, yes. Or healthcare, yes. And COVID or COVID-19, excellent. Excellent, Grayson, that's great. Excellent. And you know what else I would say? What do you think is gonna happen when I add something like this? What's gonna, if I add, so if I take what Grayson did and then I put and me or my or I, what do you think I might find? A nurse talking about themselves, right? Opinions, that's right. So I might find, like, I might actually find a nurse saying, I'm, or actually I should have put the I'm as well, me or my or I or I'm. So I'm a Canadian nurse, right? And and the vaccine is whatever, right? So these are just phrases to help you think about ways to search. So I think the reason why Grayson, this is good is because you hit Canada or Canadian, nurse or nurses or healthcare. Another one that I wrote, yeah, that's right, because you got to think of the groupings of how they're Canadian or Canada, nurses or nurse or nursing. So if you want, copy and paste one of those and just plunk it into Google and see what you get. Nurse equals nurses. Yeah, sometimes it's true. You tweak. So you might tweak something and, take a word out or like once you actually do a search, you might find that you're getting too many of one thing or not enough of another. You might just tweak it, like delete and kind of keep working on it. But it's the actual structure of the query, the idea that you group things in the parentheses, in between them, put the ors and then the ands, and then you cover off a whole lot. Who here knows how to do a search site, to search a site, but not just like by putting find? Site searches are almost as important as Boolean searches. So this is also incidentally how you get around Facebook's horrible internal search engine that doesn't let you find anything. So a site search is basically when you include this little bit in any Google search or whatever search engine you use. The word site has to be lowercase. So the word site followed by a colon, and then the URL of whatever site you want searched, followed by a space and a keyword. So in this example, you could do site : facebook.groups /groups Canada. Canada is the keyword. And this is going to give you a broad result of any groups talking about Canada on the entire site of Facebook. So obviously you're going to get a zillion results. So maybe you want to change it to just look for specific pages on Facebook, in which case you would switch out groups. You can do Boolean in group. Yes, okay, that's right. Advanced search. Excellent point, Lori. You can do Boolean and site searches in Google by going to settings, advanced search. But if you're using, let's say, DuckDuckGo or another search engine, you can also just use the site. Another interesting thing you can do is combine quote searches and site searches. So for example, here, first draft search, and this, the other thing, Lori, so that's a great point Lori's making. You can do these kinds of in settings, advanced search settings on Google, but this will also, like creating it yourself will also work if you're not on Google. And it's a good thing to know how to construct. So here, first draft searched a phrase, because one of their researchers remembered something they saw online, but couldn't remember, who had tweeted it. The phrase was hundreds of President Trump absentee ballots. And so they just put the phrase and then site, lowercase site, colon, and Twitter, and boom, the search engine searches all of Twitter for that particular phrase. So another example, if you're looking for vaccine skeptics in Canada, what could you possibly try if you want to find vaccine skeptics in Canada? Sorry, the S is capitalized because of autocorrect, but you might want to do that. Site, colon, facebook.com/groups, vaccine skeptics. Oh, actually, no, if I said Canada, then, and if I forgot to put Canada, so that might end up with a lot of Americans. So there. So I would do that. I would put, and site has to be lowercase as well. That was auto-corrected, sorry. So site, colon, facebook.com groups, vaccine skeptics, and Canada. And you can do that on any site. So it's not just Facebook. You can do it on any website. So it's lowercase site, colon, and the URL. So a little trick that First Draft did that I thought was kind of fun to share is learning how to search syntax. So another reason to search with quotes and then a domain is to find classified documents. So in this example, First Draft searched the term for internal use only. And then, so similar to the site search, they just did file type. So you just lowercase file type, colon, and then whatever file type, Word document, PDF, here it was an Excel sheet, XLS, space, site, colon, gov, which is the American government. And they actually found some very interesting stuff by doing that. The other example, this is confidential, right? And you can do like a lot of these different kind of phrases, it's the search syntax, right? Just example of what they did. This is confidential file type, looking for PDFs, possibly on any government website. And that particular search will give you PDFs on American government websites with the phrase, this is confidential. Barry, does the search engine matter? The duck had no results found when I tried for site. Did you have a lowercase s? Yeah, the lowercase s. Yeah, I've been tripped up. Like I said, that's a tricky one. It's got to be lowercase. Site has to be all in lowercase. Otherwise, you might not get. You could try it now and see if it works. It works. Yeah, cool. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay, awesome. I hope you're having fun. Okay, let's get into part 4, verification and digital investigation. No results with lowercase s. You know what? I'm gonna look into that, Barry. I wonder if it's DuckDuckGo. I'll look into it.
My hunch is it is the duck because that's the reason I use it, is so as not to get a lot of crap. And I've also tried doing searches with Google, with Safari, with the duck, and with Firefox, and have often found I get very different results.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, search engine will matter. I'm interested in yeah, you're right, because DuckDuckGo won't track, but I want to look, I'm going to ask about that and follow up with you after the workshop, because I'm interested about that. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So part 4, verification and digital investigations. So in this section, we're going to discuss some top tools according to First Draft and what is important to notice when you're looking. I'm just actually getting a link that I want to share with you. When you're looking at different platforms and how this applies to verification. So I just popped a link in the chat. This is a toolbox that First Draft has created and shared, and you guys are all free to use it. You can bookmark it. I strongly suggest bookmarking it. It's an amazing toolbox because it actually has all kinds of verification tools grouped into different sections. I'll send this as well to you separate in a separate document with a bunch of resources at the end of the workshop. But you can either set up your own toolbox or use this one, bookmark and use it. And the idea is there are so many search mechanisms and verification tools online. Like even just for a reverse image search, there's dozens of websites. TinEye, there's the Google reverse image search. There's a million of them. So this toolbox actually puts some of the best ones in groupings. So that could be very helpful for you. Number one. Number two, document everything as you're going along and doing your investigation. There's a tool called Hunchly, which saves your workflow for you. I put that in the chat. You can look it up if you're interested. Or you can even just, note down URLs, because as I'm sure you've all experienced, the internet is an ever-changing place. Things get taken down. You might see something that you want to investigate. Next thing you know, it's gone. It disappears, it appears. So documenting everything along the way will certainly help your research. And last but not least, don't forget to pick up the phone. Sometimes we forget that we are reporters, and if you're looking for something online and can't verify it, sometimes all you need is to just find a phone number and call somebody. So first draft calls, in terms of verification, these are the 5 pillars of verification. So the 5 aspects of a piece of content that you should aim to check, that you need to check. So the first being provenance, all right? It's the most important and shapes the rest of your workflow. The question, are you looking at the original piece of content? So a bomb goes off in an airport that is said to be in Belgium, but it's really in Russia. Obviously, it's really important to always ask yourself, is what I'm looking at the original piece of content? The second pillar is source. Who captured or created it? We distinguish between who posted it and who created it. So when we're talking about source, we're talking about who captured or created the original piece of content. Date, when was it captured or created? Location, where was it captured or created? And last but not least, motivation. Why was this piece of content created or captioned or captured? It's hard to verify fully motivation, but thinking about why someone may have created a piece of content, who they are, what organizations they're a part of, will help you as you proceed to verify whatever piece of info you're looking at. So earlier, I referred to this particular tweet, the George Buck tweet. One fun little website, more useful in the United States, I think we need one in Canada, is Politwoops. So this is a huge bank of tweets that were deleted by public officials. So people currently in office and candidates for office in the United States. I seriously think we should have this in Canada, but it's a fun little thing to poke around. Politwoops. It's the tweets they didn't want you to see. And that was all First Draft did to verify the fact that this particular tweet was disinformation. Reverse image searches allow you, as you all know, can help you quickly answer the question of provenance. So for example, if you do an image search and you find out the image is from 2015 and not 2021, you immediately know it's old, out of context, and there's something misleading about it. There are, like I mentioned, there's a million of these out on the web, TinEye, Yandex, Google, and others. RevEye is the best, according to First Draft. It's an extension that you download, and it's amazing because all you do is you right-click on any image online, and then it gives you, as you can see here, it gives you the option to either search all search engines, Google, Bing, Yandex, TinEye, whatever you want. So RevEye, and it's in the toolbox, okay? So you'll see in the image section, image verification section of the toolbox, you'll see RevEye. So that's the best right now. When we did this workshop last year, we talked about all the others, and at that time, Yandex was the best one. But now, 10 months later, or almost a year later, Revi really is the best one for reverse image searches. And a lot of verification, as you know, is just being observant, right? And noticing things. So what would you do if you saw something questionable in a profile of somebody posting something? This example, the reason why this is important is because at the beginning of the pandemic, as you all know, there's lots of interest in verifying medical professionals, mostly because there were a lot of people making claims about vaccines and the coronavirus. So there's a real importance associated with making sure you can verify people. So this woman, Carol Henry, her Twitter handle is Antibody Lady. So it's a very bare profile. But first thing you would do is reverse image her photo. Obviously, she says she's a B-cell immunologist. Is there some other source that backs it up? Is there a website with a bio attached? Is her contact information anywhere? Can you call her? Look at the handle. Can you search the handle and find other social media handles? Another thing we look at is the date on a profile. When did they join? Did the person join last March or did they join years before? You can also do site searches with phrases that seem to be repeated in somebody's profile to see if that language is showing up in other places that might indicate a bot. So lots of places to start. And those verification toolboxes, I actually am going to share 3 different versions. And like I said, I will also send you these after the workshop. But these are 3 different versions of those big toolkit pages of First Draft. And every few months, First Draft audits them and updates them because these tools are changing all the time. So the first one is the basic toolkit. The second one is the advanced toolkit. And the third one is the mobile toolkit, just for your own reference. And again, I will be sending you these afterwards. So digital footprinting, we just looked at that profile and thought of different ways to research. So I'm just going to go through a case study to show you, how this can play out. Now, this particular case study was something that First Draft first saw during the BLM protests in 2020. So if you were to see that on social media, would you think anything was odd about it? That post? I mean, a couple of things, some capitalized words, some not, so some of the syntax. It seems to be about supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, but then it goes into some strange wording like, don't let the media use your face to exploit the situation. So there's a tone of distrust. The other weird thing is the unusual URL. So blm.store, right? So it's unusual. And they're also claiming that every mask you buy, then they'll donate one to a protester, which is also a bit strange because, like, what's the business model, right? Like, how are they going to make money off of that? So just, something that, no, I'm going to go through what happened. They've actually taken it all down now, probably because, well, you'll see. So if you saw that weird ad, what's the first thing you would do? Probably click on the store to see. And if you were to click on the store, then you would find on their store page in Facebook, you can actually see how much was spent on their ads. So there's 2 pieces of information that can pop up. This particular example shows a person's name and the amount that was spent on the store in US dollars. So what might you do at that point? What might you do? What's the next thing you would look up if you just wanted to poke around for a bit? The person's name, possibly? Thomas Michael Dietzel? So maybe we would look that name up. And if we do, Who is this guy? Exactly. Well, apparently this is his LinkedIn profile. Doesn't look too strange, right? Until you start noticing a couple of weird things. He seems to have a lot of experience with mobile traffic buying and selling, which sounds like he might have an expertise in making money off social media. I don't even know what that means. The original post seems like they might be profiting off BLM somehow. So maybe making money. What would you do then? Check the company. Yes, check the company. So when you look actually, so exactly on that, when you look back at the BLM store page transparency, you see the page owner is somebody who owns Stu Designs, LLC. So then, okay, Stu Designs, apparently based in Florida, at which point, like you said, check the company. So when you search Stu Designs on Google, you can find a registration for the business, which, you can do that in Canada for any business as well. And they'll show you, registered, who the business is registered under. In this particular case, you find the name Diana Dietzel. All right, different first name, same last name. What would you do then? Maybe search Thomas. Yes, look her up. How about look them both up, see if they're related or somehow connected? If you search for them, it takes you to their Facebook page. It's a little weird to have a page featuring your home and your spouse, but whatever. That's what pops up, including their social media profiles along with their phone numbers. So then if you click on Thomas Dietzel's social media, you can see he posted a video showing aggression towards rioters. This is how we should deal with the rioters, and a video showing the street cleaning truck blasting those people with jet streams of water. So it's pretty clear what his position appears to be, down to his use of the word rioter as opposed to protester. And it's interesting to see that this BLM store claims to be supporting the movement, but on their personal page, we see precisely the opposite. So the conclusion is unclear, but it's very possible that this company is not donating masks to protesters. And at the very least, it looks like they're trying to turn a profit. So, and a note, a lot of what we do find related to misinformation is motivated by money. So sometimes things come with a political agenda, sometimes it's to make a quick buck, but there's a lot you can learn just by paying attention. And on the note of paying attention, when you're looking at dates and times, right, verifying dates and times, date is an aspect of content that you always need to verify on your own. And the reason why I really like this slide is because it shows you that all of these different platforms show times and dates in different ways. So you can't just assume something was, if it says posted 9:00 in the morning, it's not necessarily 9:00 Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. It only shows the time and date in Pacific Standard Time. Reddit, 4chan, Facebook, and Twitter show the time and date and the time zone selected on your computer or device. And that actually just changed. Twitter now is doing by how many days ago it was posted. So no longer giving a date, but giving okay, this is posted 473 days ago, and then you got to do the math. So this is always changing. Some are more complicated than others, but I like to share that because it just, again, brings up another kind of layer, something else to think about when you're looking at verification. So if we're doing verification, we need to independently verify where something was, obviously. And the reason is because we often see videos posted that don't match where the video was taken. You can also manipulate your location on Twitter and Instagram or wherever, tag a location different when you are, say you're in Paris, when you're really in Hochelaga-Maisonneuve. And if you really want to use these map tools, go to the first draft toolbox in the geolocation section, and you'll find a ton of tools. But let's look at an example. So, okay, I'm going to show you a tweet and I'm going to play it, okay? So let me just pull it up. And I'm going to play it a few times, and I want you to look and just tell me what you notice. So you can type in the chat, tell me what you notice about the video. All right. So tell me what you notice, sorry, on the video. Okay. So excuse me while I just bring this up. Whoopsie. Okay, can everybody see it? So what do you notice? Write it in the chat. Anything odd? An Italian? English? That's a lot of Arabic and English for Italy. Yes, you're right, Lori. Very. What about Corona? Corona, a Corona patient. Ah! It's actually funny just to watch. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay, stop. It's gonna play. Wait, it's gonna keep playing. I have to turn it. Okay, stop it. Okay. So, hang on a second. All right. So we notice all kinds of things. So where do you think this is? The kind of video my mom sees on WhatsApp. So there's a lot of really weird things in that video, right? He seems to be yelling help. It doesn't seem like it's obviously Arabic, Italy, Corona. So the first thing to do when you see a questionable video is take the URL and pop it into InVid. All right. InVid is a Chrome extension. It's in the toolkit. You just have to click on it, okay, and download it. So all you do is stick the URL into InVid, and it gives you a series of thumbnails of the video. And then you do reverse image search on any one of them. And you will find, and this is how it pops up. So you put the URL of the video you click on analysis, you put the URL in, and it will give you all of these thumbnails, and then you just pick whatever reverse image search you want to do. And then you'll get a series of results. And if those thumbnails were embedded anywhere, you'll find it. So this is what pops up. Apparently, people claimed the video was in all sorts of countries. One claimed it was in Turkey, another one in the Middle East, another one in Italy. Somebody else, it was from 2015. So what do we know? People claim the videos from different locations. There are versions online dating back to at least 2015. It's been posted in websites for memes and GIFs. Most of the versions are low quality. That can be a signal that it has been reposted multiple times. So in a nutshell, we know that it's not from March 2020. So you can choose to just end it there, or you can try and figure out where this video is actually from. So if you want to go a little bit further, in that series of thumbnails, you can then zoom in and look more closely at every part of that video through the thumbnails. So we did this, and in one, you notice, if you look really closely, there's a 25-cent sign. That obviously would not be in Italy, no euro. There's also street signs that when you zoom in to the thumbnails, you can see street signs that are pretty distinctive, written in English, license plates that are not European, obviously, different business signs. Here, I was able to zoom in on a sign on a lamppost, and that sign says Keene University, and I had never heard of Keene University, so of course just searched it up. Turns out to be in a university in New Jersey, in case you didn't know. So at that point, there's a lot of things to verify, right? We can look at parking lots, we can look up signs in the video, look up addresses. Then once you have an address, Google Street View. So another sign, it looked like the Unisex Union, New Jersey on one of the signs. So Googled it to get an address and ended up finding a Tomorrow's Unisex with an address in New Jersey. Pop it into Google Street Maps and boom, you've independently verified the real location of the video by matching, obvious. You cross-reference the street view with what we saw in the video and you realize it's clearly not in Italy. So why do we do this? Mainly to show that you can learn a lot from simple observation. So when you're reporting and you come across visual media, those reverse image searches are critical. Get InVid, download it on Chrome, do reverse image, try it out after the workshop, and you will find so many. You'll have fun with it. You probably won't even be able to stop. It's like one of those things. You get a bunch of thumbnails and start reverse search imaging things, and it's pretty exciting. But a few reminders. Just remember, you can fall down a rabbit hole and just keep falling. With this stuff, you can find things that you don't even have a connection to. So just stay focused, and think about spread. So if it is a questionable video, but nobody's sharing it or looking at it, is it really worth your time? Real quick activity. I'm going to show you an image and I want people to tell me where it might be. Just by observing. Any ideas? What could you possibly do? New York City, Chinatown. Barry, how'd you figure it out? San Francisco, Chinatown. Barry?
I've been there.
You've been to Joe's Shanghai?
No, but on that street looks really familiar. My daughter lived there for a couple of years.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no fair. But you're right. It is. It is. David A. Breeden Law Office. Lawyer. Excellent. Exactly. English signs, SUVs. Lori, that was brilliant. Seeing the office of the lawyer and Googling it, boom, you know where it is. After, I will send you a really fun game that you can do that and test. Like, I'll give you a link to a very cool game where you can do that and test your locations just through observation. So awesome. Any questions at this point?
How about deep fakes? Because I have a hard time debugging deep fakes, and they're coming more and more technologically good.
Exactly. I would say there's the advanced toolkit. So I can actually, I'm going to send you, Gabrielle, separately at the end, a few extra resources that might be able to help. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, awesome. Okay, great. Any other possible questions? Okay, so this is basically the last section before the tools and resources. So effective reporting. So given everything that we've kind of covered, what do we do with this? So how do we report on misinformation in a way that's going to help people? So one thing that it's important to keep in mind is this concept of a tipping point. So the very delicate balance between public interest and warning people about possibly misleading narratives and potential amplification that your reporting would give to that theory. So on the tipping point, these 5 questions are going to help you determine whether the tipping point has been reached. So it's really a measure of spread and potential impact. So first of all, numbers, right? How much engagement is a story getting? Depending on the size of your audience, 500 people talking about something could be something huge. 3,000 people might be really small. So like, you've got to think, how many views, how many shares, what's the engagement? Where is it traveling? So have you received something from a friend, but then you also received it from your grandmother or from your cousin? Is a piece of content moving from one age group to another or from one community to another? Has it moved across different platforms? Did it start on Instagram and now you see it on Twitter? Is it viral yet? Is it at a point where it's about to go viral? Influencers. And the definition I'm using here is really anyone who has sway or a reputation within a community, big or small. And it means that when this person shares something, people are more likely to take it at face value. As well as outlets or other journalists or news organizations reporting it or sharing it. So the moment it's out there, do you need to chime in on the conversation? How do you do that responsibly? So that's really the first point, this tipping point. And also remembering that journalists can be targeted by bad actors who want us to write about them, to amplify the news that they're pushing. It's also really helpful to think of things in two ways. So think about two ways of doing things. Either you debunk, so once people have already heard a lie, you debunk it, or you pre-bunk, which is actually much more effective because our brains are really good at remembering things that we've already heard. So pre-bunk is key, especially if you start by identifying data deficits. So those happen when everybody wants information about something and there's not a strong enough supply of credible information. And COVID was the perfect example of this. And it's really that space where information has lots of opportunity to fill the gap. You can also see it coming, right? Whenever there's something new on the horizon, if something is technically complex, scientifically complex, when things are very political, very emotional, or even just whenever there's space for legitimate questioning. So all of these things can point you to data deficits that's going to come up, of questions people are going to have. And we as journalists can aim to pre-fill those spaces with good and credible, verified information. So when people do go on their phones and search for something that's on their mind, they're going to find your credible reporting. A few examples of this, or actually after I'm going to show you a few examples of this, but I want to show you a bad example here. Visual of not effective reporting. So this picture is really a picture worth 1,000 words. If this picture is actually representing what happens when you get vaccinated, right? Not all of us like it. We also have to think about how these images can be taken out of context or downloaded or reshared or repurposed to build narratives that can be problematic down the road. So here, Dr. Bob Wachter said, huge fan here of the New York Times, but when you post a picture of a guy grimacing while getting his vaccine, when the shot actually feels like a pinprick, at least consider the fact that thousands may see this as a reason not to get vaccinated. Some will die from that decision. On the flip side, a couple of examples of strong headlines. I have 3 examples. So this one from NBC saying QAnon looms behind nationwide rallies and viral Save the Children hashtags. So remember earlier in the workshop, we talked about the Save the Children hashtag and how lots of people were misled, may have going to rallies thinking they were saving the children, not supporting QAnon. This headline provides a bit of context about what the hashtag means, who it's connected to, and hints at a motivation. So it focuses on the facts. This one's also a really good example. Down in the polls, Trump floats delaying election, which he cannot do. And then a sub-headline, trailing badly in the polls, the president baselessly suggested the election would be the most inaccurate and fraudulent in history. So it's really effective because they could have written a headline just saying Trump has suggested delaying the election, but this one provides context for why he might say this and the reality of the election laws in the US that he can't. So you have the context, the thing he said, and the reality of the situation in a short, concise way. And on pre-bunking, which is what we were just talking about, this is a great example. So remember I was saying you can see things coming. This headline is a really good example, right? 6 types of misinformation to beware of on election day and what to do if you spot them. So it's a classic pre-bunk. This journalism focuses on getting out ahead of expected rumors or conspiracies by inundating audiences with good information that ideally equips them to deal with misinformation when they encounter it, because rumors are really hard to slow once they are out there. So just a couple of really good examples. So just before we wrap up, I'm going to go over a couple of tools and resources, but again, I'll be emailing all of you a lot of the a lot of the everything that I've mentioned today, like all the different links, I'll be emailing to you separately. So we have, this is a daily and weekly newsletter tracking disinformation narratives worldwide. So it's a great briefing that you can scan it too. You can use your phone and just scan it right now if you like. So it's an excellent, excellent resource that I would highly suggest taking advantage of. It's really the most cutting edge information that we've got. I also have a vaccine, and like I said, I will send you all of this after as well. This is a vaccine insights hub, live insights, intelligence, and reporting guidance on emerging health and vaccine misinformation. So this is a really interesting place to go as well, especially right now. And there are further guides and interactives, walkthroughs, and explainers at firstdraftnews.org/training. And just, here we go. So I'm gonna put in the chat a link to a post-training survey that you can either take now or take in a few minutes. We do have a couple minutes. I know, like I said, it was a lot of information, but if you have any other specific questions or any observations, I'd love to hear them. I hope that this was useful to you, at the very least, just to introduce you to some interesting resources that are out there and just ways to think of things. Like I said, it's the second stage in the Journalists for Human Rights training. And the training, I think some of you in this session took the training last year. So you can probably see, you know, it's different because there's lots of different things. Things are changing constantly. So any other questions? I wanted to keep to time. I feel like I was like, but I hope that you guys found this interesting, at least. Thank you, Narmeen. I hope, yeah, I hope that you did learn something new. I see that there's a lot of faculty members and I was like, oh, I hope I'm actually telling you something you didn't know. Hopefully, at the very least, you have a number of excellent resources that I'll be sending you as well to complement your arsenal. Thank you, Gabrielle, to complement. Oh, good, I'm happy. Okay, so please do fill out the post-training survey because it's constantly evolving, like I said, changing and evolving, and I will be sending you all extra resources. Thank you. Thanks, Lori.